Lovely. Awesome. Thank you. Oh, well, it's great to see you. People still coming in. I think we're going to be over several screens today because we've got quite a lot of participants who've signed up and who are just coming in now. But it's lovely to have you with us. Just a reminder to be on mute if you can. If you're happy to have your camera on, please do have your camera on. If not, or if at any time you don't have your camera on, that's absolutely fine. Because we're going to be quite a large group, we'll use chat for people to send messages and ask questions and things like that, because we think we're going to be quite a few of us today. And so thank you for everybody for being on mute at this point. That would be really lovely. Thank you. Right, still got a last few people coming in to the meeting, to the waiting room. That's lovely. Wonderful. Okay, I think I'm going to get started. We have nobody waiting. Oh, they keep people. Annabelle, you're all right to keep letting people in? Yeah, marvelous. Thank you. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to today's session about youth voice and youth-led practice. I'm Louise from Artswork. I'm a white woman in my 50s. I've got short blonde hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a turquoise top with big blue flower earrings, and my background is blurred today. I'm joined by my colleague Annabelle, who you'll hear from a bit later on. We've been exploring and enabling youth-led practice in communities for quite a while now in our work, particularly through our Young Cultural Changemakers programme, and also challenging ourselves as Artswork about how we as an organisation can be increasingly youth-led. So we've teamed up with our colleagues Anna, Ali and Jen from Norfolk and Norwich Festival, Connect and Create, who may give us a little wave now and will speak to you and introduce themselves later. They are also developing their and others' youth voice practice, particularly through the Youth Voice Consortium they're supporting in the East of England, as well as through their own programmes. So we all want to be part of and grow a supportive community of practice around youth voice and youth-led practice, because it's important, because it's not always straightforward, and because there is brilliant stuff going on around our region and elsewhere that we can all learn from and benefit from. So this isn't going to be a session which is full of sharing information, packed PowerPoints telling you what to do. There's a huge amount of knowledge already on this call. We know this from the organisations who've come along. But also there are some really great resources out there. And if you sign up to the Thinkific learning platform that's been opened as part of this course, you will have access to those resources if you want to either refresh your memory or learn something more, or delve a bit deeper into some of the different models and approaches around this area of work. Instead, these sessions are about being inspired and having time to reflect and work out bespoke action plans. When we were talking to people about what they might want, this was the thing that they really said we would like. So things that will help each of you to move your practice forwards wherever it's at right now. So we really hope this will be a super productive couple of hours for everyone. So what's going to happen? We're going to hear from some speakers, some organisations and some of the young people that they have worked with. We'll give you an individual task to do off camera about why each of you wants to develop youth voice, youth-led practice, and what's helping or hindering that. So there'll be time for a break from the screen then. Then as we go on, we'll do some small group reflection and then come back together to co-create some collective wisdom. So as we start today's session, I want to begin by inviting two people just to speak very briefly to set the scene. And the first of these is Mara, a young person who is going to be observing today's session as part of our evaluation, but who's just going to share what youth voice means to her.
Hiya, I'm Mara from Artswork. I'm white. I have brown hair, early 20s. My hair's up in a ponytail. And youth voice for me, I think it's important, as often young people are overlooked, ending up with things that they might not necessarily want or need. And I hope to use my own youth voice to empower young people to use theirs, hoping that it will help them feel seen in spaces where they may be used to being ignored. And when growing up on the Isle of Wight, it was often hard to feel heard as there were limited options for the arts. But working with Artswork, I have seen a positive change in regards to youth voice, and young people seem to be much more engaged with their community as they feel their voices are starting to be heard and valued.
Thank you so much, Mara. That's brilliant. Just before I come to our second person, just before we go into our speakers, I would just like everyone on the call to just pop into the chat who you are and where you're from, whether you're from an organisation or a freelance practitioner, whatever. Just introduce yourself in the chat so other people on the call have a sense of who's in the room. This is where we see who is fast at typing. Oh, hello, Michael. Lovely to see you. Oh, wonderful. Fantastic. So we've got people from all over the southeast. Wonderful. That's great. Oh, wonderful. Stoke-on-Trent. Interesting. Ah, great. Welcome to all the creative practitioners and freelancers. Lovely to have you here. And no problem if your screen is off and you're eating your lunch. That's absolutely fine. Fantastic. Thank you. Oh, yes, Rugby Works. Interesting. Awesome. Brilliant. Thank you. Just keep popping those into chat. That would be lovely. I'm just going to hand now to Claire Toogood from Arts Council South East, who's just going to say a little bit about why Arts Council South East are supporting these sessions.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you, Mara, as well. And this is super exciting. Look at all these brilliant people who are in the room. Fantastic. Hello, I'm Claire Toogood. I'm a Senior Relationship Manager at Arts Council England. I'm a white woman in her mid-40s with dark blonde hair up in a clip, and I've got black framed glasses. Louise invited me just to take a moment, and I just really wanted to welcome everyone and say how thrilled we are at Arts Council that you've joined us for these events, and also how great it really is to be working in partnership with Artswork, with Norfolk and Norwich Festival, and with Royal Ballet and Opera to deliver these events that we've got this series of events. So as many of you will already know, Arts Council's 10-year strategy, Let's Create, really strives to put participants at the heart of all creative work. It champions work that's inclusive and that's relevant to the various communities that it serves. And I think nowhere is that more important than work created for and with young people. So we know how powerful it can be to work with young people, to give voice and space to their creative ideas, to encourage their engagement with the arts for their own interests, but also pathways and for the wealth of well-being benefits that the arts can provide as well. We know how exciting it can be when we hand things over to young people, when we co-create and we learn from them, and we support them to make decisions and bring their perspectives. And we know that because we've seen so much great practice delivered by yourselves through your applications to us, funding applications, we are passionate about this area of work, and we want everyone to be committed and excellent at it. We want a young person to be able to have a really positive experience wherever they live and whoever they engage with. So we wanted to collaborate on this series of events because we know that we're always learning, and we expect that you also are always looking to learn. I hope today will help us all to get better and more authentic in our work with young people, to work towards a growing community of practice around this work. And we really want to see that reflected in the applications that you put into us as well. So we'll be following up these sessions with some opportunities to have a chat with us about your project plans with children and young people. So we'll follow up with more details about how and when that can happen after this event. And lastly, I just want to say I must thank all my colleagues who have put in so much effort to shape this programme, and all our guest speakers and collaborators, and really the biggest thank you to all the young people who are in the room and joining us today, with a special mention to Louise and also my colleague Sam, who have led this bit of work together. I hope we all have a really enjoyable session. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Claire. Right, let's get on with session 1. So as you'll know, this is the first of 4 sessions. This first one is about why enable youth voice, why would you want to do this, and what will help to move this practice forward. Then there's another session in November that is about particularly consulting. It's about listening to, hearing young people's voices. Then in the new year, there'll be 2 more sessions, one that's about co-creation and one that's about enabling young people to lead change in society. So this first one is all about the why. And I'm going to hand over to Anna now from Norfolk and Norwich Festival Connect and Create to introduce our speakers. So there's a bit of listening and inspiration and then some doing.
Okay, can you hear me? Thank you, Louise. Hi, everybody. As Louise said, fabulous to have so many of you with us today. My name's Anna McCarthy. I'm head of Festival Connect and Create. Head of the Festival Connect and Create programme as part of the Norfolk and Norwich Festival and our year-round engagement and participation programme. I'm a white woman in her 50s. I'm wearing amber glasses from the local Swedish shop, Off the Peg, and MAC orange lipstick, and I have blonde hair and a black top. My colleagues from my team, Ali Oberotman and Jen Raven, have been working with Artswork, representing Festival Connect and Create to develop this programme, and we're really excited that so many young people are an integral part of its delivery. With that, I'd like to move to introduce to you 3 different sets of young people and the organisations they've been working with, and the reasons why they're involved in great youth voice and great youth leadership practice, and what their journey's been so far. We know they're not always straightforward. We know we fail as much as we succeed, and therein lies the learning. So without further ado, I'd like to firstly introduce you to Nuha Chowdhury and Dr. Sadia Habib from Manchester Museum. Welcome, Nuha and Sadia.
Hi.
Hi, lovely to see you. We'd love to hear about what you've been up to. You have a full 10 minutes, a full exciting 10 minutes. In terms of participants, we're going to be actually hearing from 3 sets of young people. And just to keep us on track, we'll take questions at the end of all 3 speakers. If I can ask you to introduce yourselves and give a visual description before telling us about your work, that would be fantastic.
Hi, thank you so much, Anna. And thank you so much to the organisers as well. So I'm Sadia. I'm a Muslim woman of Pakistani descent. I'm wearing a black top with silver embroidery and a black floral hijab stroke scarf on my head. My background consists of light grey wooden doors. So I'm going to briefly set the context of our project, which is known as our shared cultural heritage. Let me just share my screen. Can you see that? Yeah. Yeah, you can see that. Can we see that? Can everyone nod?
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to set the context about OSH, which is short for Our Shared Cultural Heritage, very briefly, so that you know what the project was about. And then Nu has really kindly agreed to share some of the learning and some of the challenges and some of the reflections that we've been having over the last few years about what makes a really successful young people's project, and what are the challenges and barriers that we had to kind of work together to overcome in the heritage context. So OSH was a project funded by British Council and Heritage Lottery Fund. It was part of the Kick the Dust programme, which some of you might be familiar with. There were 12 or 13, I can't remember now, projects around the UK. And I was responsible for the Manchester Museum element of OSH itself, which was a partnership project with Glasgow museums and heritage organisations in South Asia. And the project was about changing the museum, hearing young people's voices, embedding young people's voices in the institution, really listening and really opening up opportunities, paid opportunities for young people to radically change the museum itself, but also change the sector. So one of the first things that I did in 2019 was set up a Young People's Museum Collective, and this was really important to elevate young people's voices. And really, really glad that Nuha's here, who's a member of the Young People's Collective, and she will be sharing more about her insights very shortly. I think one of the biggest challenges along the way was to ensure that young people weren't just sidelined or marginalized, as sometimes they are in organizations. So for me, a big driver was to publicly, to make sure that young people had a very public presence in the museum. So as much as possible, we had youth-led events that were organized by the young people, led on by the young people, where they took a real front, you know, they're at the forefront, they took a limelight in the public space, and they were very visible. And this was especially important to us years later when we realized, when we spoke to some young collectives in other museums, and they talked a lot about how they were marginalized or just kept in certain spaces and not really embedded in the kind of public programming of the museum. And I don't know if any of you visited Manchester Museum, but we had a recent capital redevelopment. We've got some brand new galleries, and one of the galleries is Belonging. And it was really important also for me that the young people were able to contribute to these new galleries. And our director was quite brilliantly supportive, and she's shared some of the findings from the research. For example, on the screen there, you can see an extract from a collective poem that the young people wrote together about belonging during COVID. And the director suggested that we publicly display that in the museum. So if you do visit, you will see that. Also really important, I think, is for anybody working with young people in the institution to create really meaningful opportunities. So here you can see some images in relation to one of the new galleries, the South Asia Gallery. It's the first permanent gallery in the UK dedicated to South Asian histories. It's in partnership with the British Museum. When I joined the museum in 2019, I saw that there was a lack of young people's voice in this co-curation process. So I pushed for young people to be involved in this co-curation, which was taking a brilliant co-curation process that was taking place with the community, but just needed the young people voice in there. So I'm really pleased to see and to share that the museum really embraced that element. And if you visit the gallery, you'll see the stories, the kind of choices, ideas of the co-design, the co-production that was done in conjunction with some of the young people. So just a couple of quick highlights. There's a lot that was done during our time in OSH over 5 years. But I think one of the most important things for me was pushing for young people to be paid. So we had paid internships, paid apprenticeships, paid work experience, because otherwise some of the young people would have to go and find jobs elsewhere, and they wouldn't have that. They need to find jobs elsewhere. As you know, we're living in times of austerity. There's a lot of struggle financially, and these young people wanted to work in the sector, but they wanted to be paid above the living wage. So we also pushed for apprentices to be paid above the Manchester living wage rather than £4 an hour, which is what we discovered that apprentices were being paid throughout the UK. And again, it's really important to share the learning from the young people, and sometimes we might not like what they say about the museum, the institution, the organisation, the way it's run, but it's really important to respect and to take that feedback on board and think of ways to actually change the museum. I'm going to skip now because I'm going to pass it to Nuha, but just very quickly to say, if you're interested in more of the reflections from the young people, please do check out the social media that we set up, the blog, the Instagram, and there's a whole host of reflections there from Nuha's peers in the Young Collective. So over to Nuha. I'm going to just share the river journey that we created together, and then Nuha can start talking us through that. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, hi, I'm Nuha. I am a South Asian young person in her early 20s. I'm a female. I am wearing a black hijab and a black top. And my background is a white wall. There's a bit of a mirror behind me, but irrelevant. And as seen from this river journey, I did not study art. Yeah, so I think a lot of like just beginning a new project is daunting in itself, but also you need to embed young people right from the beginning. Like when Sadia came to be in charge of the project in Manchester in the museum, young people were involved in the recruitment process for Sadia. Like was insane that they let young people do that, but that's very important. We need to be in control of who's going to be advocating for us, who's going to basically be our mentor. We want to have that control, especially since she's the main source of contact in a space that we don't really particularly know how to navigate yet. But yeah, being in control of that was very cool. But yeah, and I think along the journey, you can see the paying above the living wage. That was one of the first things that Sadia made sure was happening. Lots of push for that, especially since young people want to be able to work in museums and want to be able to advocate for themselves, but sometimes don't get the correct opportunities to do so. And yeah, so some of the problems that were faced by young people in the museum were a lot of staff have been here for quite some time. They're quite a bit older than us, and I think they struggled as much as we did on how to navigate a new relationship. Like we had to train some of the staff on how to work with young people and have like little sessions where we work together on some things, and we needed to be able to do so. But that became a bit of a problem in the beginning. It's no longer so much a problem, but in other institutions definitely would still be going on. But yeah, just training adults to respect young people's knowledge and experience, because it's a learning process for both parties, which I don't really think is understood so much. I'm so aware of time. So a lot of just embedding young people, as Sadia said before, in all aspects, like even the most minor of decisions. We want to be involved. Like no decision is too minor for us, and if we're involved in the smaller things, we'll want to be involved in the bigger things as well. We want to be there for every step of the way. Even the things that you guys think are boring, it's new for us. We want to be able to help you guys with that. So it was a lot of Sadia relinquishing her power, which crazy to give to young people. Well, would be seen as crazy, but we're a lot more capable than you would think. And then letting us and allowing us and helping us to put on events at the museum and trusting our instincts to do so, trusting our ideas, trusting that we think that the events would be helpful for young people. So we did like poetry nights and radical reader reading sessions, which were really cool. We also did a few trips and a lot of feeding. We love events around food. Food brings people together, and you'll never go to an OSH event without there being food somewhere in the room. But that's not why I went to the events, but one could say that. And then, but I think when you get to the end of projects such as OSH, where there's a set deadline for it, even though OSH got extended, you kind of don't really know what to do at the end. There's a support network that you build throughout the project, and it just suddenly disappears. And I think that's one of the main things that needs to be worked towards, like creating a sustainable network for young people to bounce off of and find support in, especially like in, again, a world that they don't really know how to navigate. They're half inside of. They want to be there all the way, but they don't have the support anymore because the project's ended. Sadia has been doing stuff in her own time. She's not been getting paid. The amount of references that she has written for people, crazy, but she's not getting paid to do that. That's no longer part of her job description. She shouldn't be having to do that. But that's definitely the end goal, creating like a supportive network that lasts way past the deadline of the project.
Nuha, this is so fascinating, and I feel terrible asking you to wrap to your final points. There's so many things to fit in, but this sounds like an amazing project. But just before I move to Art 31, are there any key points you'd like to leave us with? We'll of course revisit you in the questions at the end.
I think key points are, it's as much of a learning curve for you guys as it is for us. All the adults in the room, they're learning as many new things as we are, and it's just trusting each other to get what we each want out of the project.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Nuha and Sadia. We'll come back to you at the end of the presentations where there'll be more time for people to follow up on questions. But that sounds amazing. The idea of an intention to radically transform your museum is just amazing. So yeah, great stuff. Thank you. I'll just move forward now to Art 31, and I'd love to introduce Nick Willis and Emma Willets, who would like to tell you about their practice. Nick and Emma, are you with us?
We are indeed. Hello.
Hello, lovely to see you. Please proceed with your visual descriptions and also the cruel 10 minutes that we've set for you to tell us about yourselves. That would be fabulous. Thank you.
We will try our very best. My name is Emma. I'm a creative engagement practitioner for the Art 31 activity, which is based at an art centre called Gulbenkian, which is part of a bigger thing called ICCI. You might hear us reference all of those. I'm a white woman in my late 30s with long brown hair and glasses.
Hi, my name's Nick, and I'm a white man with a shoulder-length brown hair, beard, and orange glasses in his 20s. And I am a freelance designer, but who has sort of grown up with Art 31. And so we'll talk a bit about my experience within that.
Brilliant. Are we okay to share? We're going to talk through this as our river, if that's all right. So if we're okay, I think you were going to share our river for us.
And just to say, we did ask all of our speakers to think about their youth voice and youth-led practice journey as a visual river. So you're going to see the very different ways that that's coming out.
Yeah, and art is not my strong point either. I'm just going to whiz through this and kind of give some context of our journey as a river, and then Nick's going to talk about his experience. So for us, we'd always done kind of young people's activity, but about 10, 11 years ago, we wanted to embed it far more within our organisation. And so I've depicted it as kind of a dam of youth voice, like bursting through. We had huge intentions, we had massive ideas, we had lots of passion, we had a bit of funding, and it started off as this really big, strong river of like, we're going to change the world and put youth voice into everything that happens. We kind of, our big points were, we created Art 31, which is still what we call our young people's activity, which was about letting young people create arts opportunities for other young people. They also were going to make decisions internally within Gulbenkian and kind of run the venue and own the venue a bit more. And we also, one of the other aims was for us to become a bit of a blueprint for other organisations to set up their own versions of Art 31. At the very start, we did lots of visits to other inspiring places. We went to Pegasus Theatre, we went to Roundhouse, places that really embed youth voice within their organisation. And we spoke to lots of inspiring people. We set up a youth board, so the Art 31 youth board, who met and made lots of decisions. You see, I've depicted some waterfalls. At times, it felt like we were going on a really exciting journey of like going over a waterfall. And we were having amazing, exciting conversations with kind of the government and the Arts Council. And then from my point of view, they kind of went down into a bit of a pool and stagnated there a little bit, like nothing, there wasn't the next step to follow on. We kind of hadn't set that bit up. So having these big conversations and then just kind of letting them sit there. As one of my colleagues said, this pool was quite deep. It was deep with knowledge. It just wasn't going anywhere. A little bit trickled back into our main river, but not everything. And equally, we were having conversations with other organisations and helping them to set up their own Art 31 or their own youth board, but sometimes they didn't have the infrastructure to support that. So again, it was like an exciting start, but then that stagnated sometimes. We then went through a period of years, which is where Nick will talk about later, of lots of staff changes. And with that came lots of different intentions of how to run Art 31 and how we kind of communicated with them and what we communicated out and what the point of it was. And it became a little bit more politically charged, I would say. And the youth board being more involved in kind of having a national impact or really kind of, politically led. In amongst all of that, I'm trying to whiz through it as quickly as I can, we set up a younger youth board for our 8 to 12-year-olds. Most of our funding is for 13 to 25-year-olds. So we called that RT31. And yeah, it was a bit of a weird period of not really being able to establish what Art 31 meant, who it was for, what our aims were. And we had young people really involved within Gulbenkian, within Art 31. And then I've drawn some boulders because it went on a bit of a curly journey. And I think one of these boulders, we ended up asking some of our young people to do too much. We asked too much of them. I'd say Nick was very much in that position. Our kind of more enthusiastic, really articulate young people were kind of asked to do lots of speeches and deliver and speak to people. And it wasn't the right way to do it. We also found that at points we were becoming a bit tick boxy with the way we worked with the young people. And we would say things like, well, this has been Art 31, this has been programmed by Art 31 or produced by Art 31. And the reality was sometimes that wasn't the case. And it was a bit of a, do you like option A or option B? If I'm being completely honest, it wasn't really from them completely. And we'd always led kind of one of the slogans about like no decisions about us without us. And I think then we went through a period of time where that wasn't quite true. Just to add, I wasn't always in this role. I have been along the ride of Art 31, but in very different roles, and entered quite a rocky period, I would say, of us not getting it right. And I depicted it as rocky. And then one of the other young people I spoke to about this was like, no, it's like a drought. So I've drawn a cactus. But it was a period where I don't think we were doing it right, and we weren't asking the right questions or giving the right opportunities. We then entered the rocky rapids of COVID, which we put a rubber ring for, because actually we enjoyed the ride of COVID in a weird way in terms of what it meant for our department. And it meant we were responding to things. We were being really genuine with what the young people around us needed at that time, and we were responding to them. And we created so much stuff for them, but all really relevant to what they were asking for. The youth board changed into something called Generate, so similar thing, but had more of a definite purpose. And one of the big purposes was like a flagship event that we do called Gen Fest, which is a young people's festival designed for and by young people. We now do that. We've done that for the last 4 years. And the river got a bit smoother and more gentle and more streamlined. And we started looking closer to home and looking at responding to the young people that are in and around our venue. And we pushed our work into 3 streams to try and make sure that we were always doing something that fitted within what our funding wanted us to do, but also what the young people were asking for. And those 3 streams were take part, so getting involved in workshops and masterclasses and things like that. Take the lead, so encouraging and helping young people to step up and facilitate or whatever they wanted to do, and take on the world, which was more our careers strand of the work we were doing. And those rivers have like crossed over and are a bit of a wild ride and are sometimes a bit muddy. But I put the Gulbenkian River into it because I feel now that those strands are really embedded within everything that happens at Gulbenkian. Like that youth voice is really prominent and it's there all the time in everything we do. I've then drawn, they're not magic ones, they are like locks in a canal of us trying to like, we're assessing things. We just had another staff change and it's like, because we're talking an 11-year period. It's not massive staff changes all the time. We just had quite a big one. And I feel like this is a chance for us to like trickle through what's actually needed and wanted. We are constantly assessing, which is why it's been this journey, because we haven't sat back and just let it happen. We want to change it when it doesn't work well. And so we're now on this, like, what is next? I think there's a bit of a push to go back into the more politically influenced things, but then also there's a calmer route that's a little bit closer to home. And we are working now with our young people and as a team to try and establish where we're making sure that youth voice is really genuinely integrated into what we do. Whew, I'm going to pass over to Nick, who's going to speak a little bit more.
Yes, so I guess for a slight bit of context, I joined kind of in that river period slightly earlier on, where it was at the political stage. So I haven't necessarily been involved throughout the whole of Art31's history, but I sort of started in about 2017. And my first kind of initial introduction to it was through youth theatre, which is one of the kind of schemes that I guess and programs that fall under the Art31 umbrella. And kind of through that, you know, so youth theatre is very much led by youth voice. So even from that very introduction, when, you know, just taking part in a program of events, you know, I didn't really particularly have any interest in kind of leading youth voice beyond that. But I mean, it was very much embedded in that kind of area of being able to, you know, have a say in what you cover each term and, you know, all that kind of thing. And from there, I then started joining some of the other programs. So there's also the National Theatre Connections scheme that the Gulbenkian kind of partake in, which again, kind of as a young person was a great way to kind of introduce more to basically just how the kind of the Gulbenkian and Art31 kind of run as general. And then kind of after time, I was then able to kind of join and find out more about the other kind of opportunities beyond the sort of the more, I guess, prescriptive activities that you could take part in, like the youth board. So I then joined the youth board, like I said, at that kind of more political time, where I'd say it was probably less creative in a sense, but more kind of led on youth voice and making those kind of political statements, kind of like what Emma was talking about in terms of doing speeches and talking about funding applications and that kind of thing, which, you know, is definitely has its place and is a very important thing. But I think that balance then got slightly lost, I think, between whether the kind of the creative and the more kind of political side. And Emma, as Emma talked about that kind of rocky period and kind of then coming into kind of COVID, and when Art31, the youth board kind of developed into this Generate. So the kind of the strand that was then part of programming this GenFest festival that Emma touched on. And so these kind of then strands of then programming were kind of a very good way to be able to weave those two aspects of the more creative, but also the more kind of, I guess, political and youth-led practice, and be able to actually kind of bring them together in a way that was really constructive. And for me, kind of this was the point where I was sort of coming out of the, at that point anyway, it's kind of since changed, but I was coming out the end of the upper end of the kind of the age spectrum of what a lot of the kind of programs are being run. So that's kind of when I went to uni and ended up, I studied kind of design. But at that point, I then started freelancing with the Gulbenkian as well. So I then sort of, my role then kind of transitioned into one of slightly more of a, I guess, more professional working relationship as well. So it then meant that there were opportunities for kind of paid opportunities, which was really, you know, a great way to be able to support, you know, those young people beyond, like Emma was saying, with the take the take on the world, take the lead strands and things like that. It was kind of also at that point that I was asked to join the wider ICCI advisory board, so the kind of the big overall board that kind of sits as part of the Gulbenkian and the university, talking, you know, much wider. And I was sort of the representative of the youth board, so I was able to kind of take that element from the voices from the young people and kind of bring them to the wider board to make sure that they were then being implemented as we felt fit.
Nick, I'll just have to move you to your wrap up and final points. I'm so sorry because it's so fascinating, but we'll come back to you in the questions.
Perfect. Yeah. So yes, so that's kind of the period where it's been, have kind of been able to do various interview panels and kind of influence, particularly on Gulbenkian being an MPO. So I was able to have an influence on that kind of funding application things as well. So I've very much had a journey of going from participating in activities to then being able to kind of evolve that into more of a kind of working professional relationship as I've gotten older to suit.
Thank you so much. That sounds amazing. I'm just really particularly interested in just what rigor you've applied to your reflective practice there. And you've really, you know, put yourself in a position where you've elicited what was authentic and real about it to inform going forward. And I think both you and our previous speakers, it's been really remarkable that you've had these very ambitious intentions at the beginning of what you've been doing. So that's been striking as well. So thank you. We'll come back to you in the questions shortly. Just move to like to introduce the South Coast Music Partnership now. Matt Bromley and Hannah Buckingham. Matt, I understand Hannah's not feeling too good today, but you're going to carry the load and talk to us and represent her. So please introduce yourself and give a visual picture. You have another cruel 10 minutes before we move to the Q&A for the 3 speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think someone was going to share our 2 journeys, so that's possible. We can have Hannah's on screen. That'd be amazing. My name is Matt Bromley. I had a big birthday on Friday, so I now get to tell you that I am 40 years old. I'm white and I've got mid-length hair. I'm wearing a plaid shirt as well. I'm the inclusion manager at the South Coast Music Partnership, and so we are the new hub lead organisation that represents Southampton, Isle of Wight, Portsmouth and Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. And so I'm going to share some of our work, and I'm going to just, first of all, we've done 2 journeys. I'm going to first of all talk about Hannah's journey, and then I'm going to talk about my own journey as well. And we wanted to share this as 2 journeys because they are 2 separate journeys. And so I'm sharing on behalf of Hannah, who's not feeling very well. So Hannah really started as this kind of pontoon project assistant. It was about a kind of open call and getting to join a team of young women, co-creating an online exhibition, showing the work of increasing digital skills of women aged 18 to 35. And it was that led her to become a research and development assistant as part of a Kickstart post with Artswork. And it was there that role included a placement with the Southampton Cultural Education Partnership, which included researching models of youth governance and youth voice. It also included a placement with ourselves in Southampton and Isle of Wight Music, supporting our youth voice strategy. And I think one of the brilliant things that I take from that was how great it was that, and Hannah was one of 3 Kickstarters. It was how we're often worried about tokenism with young people. And actually by those 3 young people going and researching methodologies for embedding youth voice, they then could sit and talk to the Cultural Education Partnership Steering Group. They could talk to our leadership team and not be there as a token of kind of the voices of other young people, but rather be there as someone with experience of how young people can be better heard at every single level of the organization. I thought that was such a great part of that role. Hannah then, thanks to the skills, the knowledge, the understanding, the confidence that came from being part of that Kickstarter role, was able to take on being a young trustee at Newland Art Gallery, and has progressed in her career both with Artswork at times and also with ourselves at Southampton Isle of Wight Music. So at Artswork, She was working as a creative careers researcher, consulting with young people across the whole Solent region around opportunities and barriers to creative careers, creating questionnaires, conducting interviews, and then presenting those findings as well. At St Isle of Wight Music, she has become and is currently working as our young co-project manager for our Youth Voice Network, which is a project across 5 regions on the South Coast. And, you know, Hannah's doing project management there, supporting the development of a diverse range of approaches to youth voice and youth leadership. There's workforce development and reflection as part of that. She's been developing training resources as part of that. She's been getting young people the support they want and need, and directing and managing those resources, and including running a group herself where called Mixzine, which is a youth-led online publication, and using theory of change to kind of get started and running theory of change workshops with young people to help them to determine where it is that they want to go. And watching the success of how young people engage in that theory of change model was really, really a big transformative moment for me, watching Hannah do that. And she's also been working at Spud, an art gallery, together Make Art, establishing new creative workshops with more independent leadership. So that's kind of Hannah's journey, and it's been such a wonderful journey. On the second little river we've got is my journey. It starts very much with lots of different things around pupil and young person led projects that I was involved in earlier on in my career. And then what I've got right in the middle is what I've described as the COVID waterfall, because I think there was just such a dramatic change in the way we all had to interact with the world of work that COVID came along, and some things it accelerated and some things it broke. And we were very lucky in lots of ways, because it was at just that moment in our journey when COVID hit that it accelerated our youth voice journey rather than breaking it. And I feel very fortunate about that. And I think we found 2 things in that process that I think might be helpful to share. One is really around it, that we found, we just kind of came to this realization, like, if you keep looking for the same things, you will keep on finding the same things. And so it was down to us. It is our responsibility to change what it is that we are looking for. If we want the voices of young people, if we want young people to be more involved, we want them to lead and be included, then we have to change what we are looking for. And so the other key then was breaking that cycle. How do we break out of that? And for us, it was about starting with the workforce. And for us, that was about employing young people, and in particular, employing young people in that critical age range of 18 to 25, who have incredible skills, have incredible things to offer to our workforce, that we can then come alongside and help to be part of that workforce. And Hannah has been one of them. And her journey that you've just seen demonstrates just how how incredible it is, and how I'm so proud of everything Hannah's achieved. She's done some incredible work and continues to do incredible work. And so coming from that COVID waterfall has been a real transformation in so many aspects of our program and our project and our organization. I think if I was to highlight one key one, it would be around making decisions closer to where young people are at. And it was Emma earlier that spoke about the idea of that they were asking themselves the wrong questions. And actually, it's something that I've learned from Hannah, because Hannah does it brilliantly. Hannah's use of questioning is incredible in sessions, to me, in our meetings, and in our strategic meetings as well. And I think for me that the big change has come when you start to think about, if you are going to offer young people, if you're going to ask young people questions and offer them real and genuine choice about what they answer those questions with, then you have to hold space for those answers. And that means now, as a manager and as a strategic leader, I am no longer managing a manufacturing process, or what we think of perhaps as a project process, where you have a predictable set of process to just work your way through. instead, I am now managing a creative process. And actually I hadn't thought about it in that way until Emma was speaking earlier. So I love these Zooms, because we get to learn from each other, and it helps to clarify exactly what we're thinking about. And that changes the structure of the sessions. Yes, it changes the way I work as a manager. It changes the way we think as strategic leadership, because if you are going to hold space in those places where young people can really make decisions, if you're going to allow them a creative journey, then that has implications all the way up the tree, and that forces us and makes us think about strategy in a very different way, because you're thinking about what can we do to empower young people to make those decisions closest to where it really impacts them. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the key takeaway, and I'm probably gonna wrap that up there, because I am out of time as well. So I hope that's helpful, and I'm sure there'll be lots of things to continue talking about.
That was amazing, Matt. So exciting to hear about everything you've been doing, and indeed what Hannah has as well, and just how impassioned you are about it. So it's, yeah, hopefully it's inspiring for everybody who's been listening in. We'd love to have some questions now. It is question time to all three sets of speakers. So I don't know if people would like to raise their hand, electronic or otherwise, and we can move to them to put a question or a query or a comment or any feedback to the speakers so far. I'm going to scan all of the participants on my screen, of which there are many, and just see if somebody is raising a hand. There's a lot of people here today. Some of you aren't live in terms of your cameras on, but yeah, any questions from anybody? I'm scanning, I can't see any hands so far. Yes, Emily.
It was just more a reflection, actually, rather than a question. It just listening in, and the kind of responsibility that everybody has taken for those young people, and that particularly resonated with the kind of legacy of projects, and how we might think about that a bit more and it's certainly something that I think about when I'm looking at young people's projects, about what, once you've engaged those young people and gone to all of that effort and time and energy, and you've built a connection, it's, yeah, that you've invested in those young people and they've invested in you, and that carries responsibility. And so it's just thinking about kind of what potential partnerships some of these projects that we deliver or programs we deliver could develop further, in order to allow those young people to kind of grow and take their natural path into the next step. And that doesn't have to be an institutional, it can be a person, it can be an organization, it can be a network, yeah, it's just thinking about that. And that's what I'm thinking about as well, is how we kind of support further understanding of that.
Thank you, Emily, that's great. Any other thoughts or feedback for the speakers, or any other comments that anybody would like to make at this point? I'm just, again, we've got so many fabulous participants here today. I'm just scanning through everybody involved. If I'm missing somebody.
Sam's got his hand up.
Sam, please, yes.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sam Eden Green from the Arts Council. Well, I've got a question for anybody who spoke, but I'd be really keen to hear from the young people who were speaking. Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of work going on, and we see a lot of people who want to do work, listening to young people. And, I know that for any work to, be meaningful, it's got to be genuine. But what do you think are some like real red flags that come up where you think that you're being, you're being asked to get involved in something that's not going to be authentic or genuine, where maybe you feel like it's maybe tokenistic, or what sort of things should organizations try and avoid doing. Be honest if you can.
I guess that's a question to the young people.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably touch on that. I mean, I think probably one of the things I've experienced in the past, I think often, especially when for the first time, you know, maybe it's like a teenager or something, when you're kind of introduced to these kind of ideas of youth voice, and you know, you're asked, you know, to do a speech on something, or you're asked to, you know, potentially join a panel of some kind. Often when, you know, you've not got any experience of that, and you don't quite know what that's going to entail. I think I've had in the past where potentially you're the only person who's asked to do that, which on one hand is great, but I think actually that support of being able to do it with other young people and actually having that kind of group, I think is really important, because it makes you more comfortable, and it also means that you can actually share in that experience more, which I think is more beneficial for for everyone involved, and it just makes it a bit less daunting. I think when we were talking earlier about potentially asking too much, I think it kind of got a bit, you know, all on a few people, but not necessarily actually being able to bring that together in a kind of more of a group way is probably what I'd say to that.
Thank you, Nick. Any other questions or comments from people before we move to our next section? Please feel free to leave comments or questions in the chat as well. We can pick up on those as we go through, or come back to them.
There's a question from Heather from the Lightbox, who says, how has it been trying to get other colleagues into the idea of giving the youth voice? I don't know who'd like to respond to that.
Great. Any of our presenters like to respond to that question?
Happy to say a few words if it's helpful. And actually, I think it's partly an answer to what Sam was asking as well, because actually I think there is always a range of responses, and there is always a range of keenness among colleagues. And I think actually one of the red flags I perhaps look for in colleagues when we're thinking about youth voice is where colleagues are talking about they talk about offering young people a choice, but have left no space to act upon that choice. And so I think if you spot that there's space for asking the questions, but not space for giving an answer, for responding to the answer, that's a big red flag. And sometimes we do see that in colleagues, and that's something then that we do work on and start to encourage colleagues to think about managing that process differently, so that if you're going to ask the question, think about how you can respond and leave space for response.
I think going off.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I think going off of what Matt just said, it's a very difficult space to navigate, because the young people are very unsure about what answers are suitable as well, because it's a new space. They don't know what. A lot of the times in the beginning, we're just going to be trying to cater to you. But you guys need to be open to creating a comfortable space where I can tell you exactly what I want from you as the person that's supposed to be helping me and mentoring me, and then also not giving me any sort of pushback, because a lot of the times I am going to say stuff that I don't like, you guys might not like, especially when, like, as a South Asian person in a colonial space like the museum, you're not going to hear everything that you like. And it's just making sure that colleagues don't like come at my responses with aggression and just straight up dismissing my suggestions and concerns.
I think to go back, sorry, I don't know whether it's helpful for me to add anything, but just, I guess it's a combination of both answers. But to Sam's question, I think sometimes it's not just about giving young people space to tell us their thoughts and give the answers, but also create that space for young people to be able to ask the questions and like set the agenda. Like that's where we should be at with all of it, is it's not just getting them to respond, but but it coming from them at the very start. Yeah, I would say. Yeah. And the process is slow sometimes, and I think it's about just keeping encouraging or like finding ways for those young people to be in every part of the space, so that it just becomes something that's embedded and like kind of it's business as usual. Young people are embedded in every single part of it. It's not like, oh, here's our bit with the young people. It's just that's part of the whole process, but it is a slow process. I think sometimes.
Thank you, Emma. Great points.
Just to quickly add to what everybody said, and it just links to the point that Emma's just made, is that one of the things that I noticed in the museum when you involve other staff and other colleagues is to kind of dismantle any stereotypes or assumptions that if young people are of a certain ethnicity or race, they're only going to be interested in discussing issues to do with that ethnicity or race. So a young person might want to come and be involved in the museum and gain experience in conservation or comms, or do something around dinosaurs, for example, or archaeology. So there's a lot of having to tackle these presumptions and assumptions that young people, that the adults know that the young people are only interested in this kind of limited, narrow scope. So it involves a lot of listening and trying to understand what the young people actually want from the museum and trying to then offer that in return.
Thank you so much, Sadia. My schedule tells me we're running 10 minutes late, so
no, we're fine. We have time built in. We did have time built in. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna, and thank you to all of our speakers and people who had questions. That's been such an interesting starter for us to think. And I think now we're going to move to the bit where we'll ask you to have a little break, but also do a bit of work on your own before coming back and sharing and thinking about where you are at, what your rapids, boulders, great bits, sticky bits might be. So I'm going to hand over to Annabelle now, who's just going to set this up.
Hi, I'm Annabelle Cook. I'm Deputy CEO for Artswork. I am a white woman in her 50s with shoulder length blonde hair. I'm wearing a black top and I'm sitting in front of a white background with a very snazzy radiator. Okay, so I am just going to share my screen just to be able to show you what we're talking about. So you've seen a few of these already, but these are called a River of Life. And what we're going to ask you to do is to spend 15 minutes and at the same time you can make yourself a cup of tea, go for a wee, whatever you need to do. But basically, it's a way of tracking your journey. Now, if you're like me, I'm not particularly arty and I'm also not particularly visual, but what I find is brilliant about this exercise is it allows you to think about that no journey is direct from A to B, and oftentimes you might have to turn back on yourself to kind of then move forward. So this is my one, and you can see, kind of I've got a big sort of bend in my river where I suddenly realize I'm doing loads of stuff with young people, but I'm not doing it with them, I'm doing it for them. And so I had to kind of completely unpack and unpick what I was doing in order to move forward. And also it doesn't always have to be work related. So the birth of my children had a big influence on the way that I then approach working with young people. So basically, if you're much more arty than me, this is Louise's journey. You can tell that Louise comes from a visual arts background, unlike me, which is drama. So, you can go mad and make it really beautiful. But the point is that you are creating a river for yourself. If you find, you're all creative people, if you find a river analogy doesn't work for you, you can create your own. You can make a tree, you can do a brainstorm, you can just write down some ideas. The whole point is to look at those moments in your kind of building up to this moment right now where you've been exploring youth voice in your practice. And, kind of don't be afraid to think about those kind of boulders in the water where, you hit a dam or you hit the rocks or whatever and something went wrong, because that's where we're going to get most of the learning. So you're going to have 15 minutes. What we're going to ask you to do is everyone turn their cameras off. You've got 15 minutes to do this. So none of them are going to be beautiful, and do go and have a cup of tea or go to the loo or whatever you need to do at the same time. And we will see you back here at 16:20. So 20 past 4.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed a little time away from the screen and have had a moment to just reflect a bit about why you want to do Youth Voice, where you're at with it, where you're at with youth leadership, good stuff, the bad stuff, all those different things. You know, come back on in, and if you're able to pop your camera on, that would be lovely. Welcome back, welcome back. Great to see you again. Okay, right, Annabelle, you want to introduce the next bit?
So what we're going to do now is we're going to put you into smaller groups in breakout rooms so that you can share your rivers or whatever you have created. You can either share it through your camera or you can just talk through it. Basically, what we want you to do is talk about what are some of the challenges that you've experienced or you're currently facing in your journey around youth voice and youth leadership, and to start to think about what some of those mitigations might be. So it's just an opportunity really for you to have conversations amongst yourselves about what, you know, kind of what that thought, what's been stimulated by your river journey. So you're going to have 15 minutes in these breakout rooms, and my lovely assistant Louise is going to open the breakout rooms now. And then, yeah, we will call you back in to the main room in 15 minutes time.
So you should all have been invited to join a room where you should find 3 other people, I think. They're all 4s. And that's everybody, including speakers and people like Jen. Please do join a room. Thank you.
I think we've got a couple.
I'm just about to put them somewhere. Yes, they were assigned.
Very good.
Right, hopefully, Nuha, you should have, there we go. Awesome. Yeah, that's okay. So yeah, I put you and Lara into your own room, but you don't have to go to it. Ooh. How are you doing, Harry and Lara? You okay?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Louise.
Hello, hello.
Has joined the meeting. Wendy Clark has joined the meeting. Ellie Leandau.
Lovely to have you back in the main room. Great to have you back. Wonderful. Right, I think everyone is back now. So I hope those were interesting conversations. You're able to make a few connections and to think through where you're at and some of the some of the barriers, maybe some of the things that might overcome them. So, Annabelle, what are we doing next?
Next, we're going to use Mentimeter. For anyone who doesn't know how to use this, effectively, you want to either use the QR code or use the join code up at the top, which is currently being covered by my share screen, but hopefully it isn't for you. And what we're asking you is just to put in kind of your 3 main challenges that you've thought about over the last 15 minutes or so, or any that have occurred to you before or now. If you can try and use 1-word phrases or 2 words, don't make a big long sentence. That would be good, because what we're trying to get is a word cloud going. And if you enter the 3 all at once, that's the way to do it, because otherwise Menti will stop you adding more. And if you see a word on the screen that you think, yes, absolutely, then just type it again, because as you will all know with a word cloud, the more people that say the same thing, the bigger the word gets. So away you go. I'm delighted to see people are doing it and it's happening. So that's fantastic. So just whilst the last few responses come in, it's really interesting to see, obviously, time and capacity, which are effectively pretty much the same thing, I would think, are really big challenges. I'm fascinated to see money is much smaller than I was expecting. Sustainability is another one that's writ large there. I'm just checking the chat to make sure that no one's going, oh my God, I can't use it. No. Okay, thank you, Nuha. Fab. Any other kind of comments on what you're seeing there? Any surprises that people are seeing? You need to stick your digital hand up if there are, because I can't see anybody. Bureaucracy, yeah, that's writ quite large there, isn't it?
Annabelle, it's Karen. I'll just jump in quickly with
Yeah.
the time and capacity. I think what we said in our group is that often it's just one person, especially in a small organisation, and often that person may not even be full time. So I think the time and capacity actually links to the money and the funding, because there's not enough money and funding to fund more people to do the job. So whilst I think everybody knows we're underfunded in many environments, we accept that now, that there's not enough money, but we still feel responsible for trying to do all of that work on our own. Hence we say there's not the time or capacity in which to deliver, perhaps.
Brilliant. Thank you, Karen. That's very true, isn't it? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, what we'd like to do is the same thing again. What things are you thinking might overcome some of those barriers? So, again, 3 responses all at the same time, because otherwise Menti doesn't like it. So yeah, things that you're thinking about, ways to mitigate some of those challenges that you've got or have identified. I'm loving seeing the word collaboration there. Oh, it was almost bigger than funding for a little while, but funding has now taken over.
It's interesting too that leadership is there as quite a big thing. My experience of this has been that it's been really hard to make this happen if the leaders in an organization or trustees or regional leadership aren't behind it, because then it's hard to carve out the budget and get the right amount of resource to do the work. Or if they just pay lip service to it and say, yes, marvelous, but then don't actually put in place the resources that can make it a reality.
Brilliant. So planning is quite a big one there. Honesty. I like that. Honesty. Yeah. That knowledge. So there's loads there. And what we will do is we will share these with people afterwards, so that these can continue to kind of be something that you can refer back to and think about. Does anybody want to kind of comment on anything or explain why they've put a particular word in there? Sam?
Oh yeah, yeah, it's Sam here. I just thought I put leadership down because one of the interesting things that said in our group was that people realised that there were times when working with young people that it was okay for them to take the lead and to make the right sort of suggestions, and that it's not reasonable to expect that if you're engaging a group of anybody, but a group of young people, to hear their voice, that you just give them a blank slate and let them get on with it. They'll need the right resources and the right leadership to help them make the informed decisions.
Fab, thank you, Sam. So Louise?
No, I was just interested because I think a lot of people have said space or create more spaces and making space, but I know one of the things that we've often heard from young people is that those spaces need to be safe. And so that's quite an important mitigating factor or enabling factor. And one of the things that they've reflected back to us is that particularly where you've got really supportive facilitators who spend time making and holding that space. And the other thing, I think, reflection on the collaboration that I'd add in or want to put in there is just about that kind of the alignment of partners and teams and trustees that you need to have, because as some of the speakers said earlier, you need to make that space and you won't know what's coming and you might not like it, and they all have to be aligned so that they don't then have a wobble and try to kind of silence something that they don't like to hear. So I think that's maybe an aspect of that as well.
Lovely. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing those now. And I believe I'm going to hand over to Jen.
Thank you, Annabelle. Hi everyone, I'm Jen, and I've been working freelance with the Norfolk and Norwich Festival team and an artwork to develop these sessions. I'm a white woman in her late 30s with long red hair, and I have a yellow background. And as we've gone through the session, I've been thinking back to the original questions that framed this session, which were: why develop an embed youth voice and what's needed to make it work? And just by way of a summary, I've picked out 3 themes from both of those things. So firstly, why youth voice? It feels like one of the strongest things that came through, particularly from our speakers, was around creating radical change and to fundamentally challenge and change organisations and the wider world to rebuild systems that don't serve young people and dismantle stereotypes and assumptions. Then secondly, for everyone to be learning, growing and responding together across generations. And it feels really hopeful that often in what has been shared today, the emphasis has been on how adults need to learn and adapt. And Matt, the way you were describing the changes you've made to how you've managed, how you've been creative in your role, and doing all of those things in order to make more space and share power with young people. And then lastly, to create different pathways for young people that meet them where they are, that help them to develop relationships and connections with people and organisations, and that help them develop skills they want and need. And then in terms of what's needed to make it work, the first thing is recognition that it's a slow process and a really long-term commitment. I think particularly in what you were describing, Emma and Nick, that sometimes it stagnates and stops and starts, and that's okay. Secondly, real thought and commitment around how you create comfortable and safe space for young people, from really thinking carefully about asking the right questions, to being willing to trust young people's instincts, and avoiding defensiveness if you hear something you don't like, perhaps. And lastly, the depth of relationship and trust between adults and young people, and the time, the emotion, the effort that takes. I was really struck by that with all three groups of speakers. And I think, like Nuha said, adults like Sadia often going beyond their capacity to do this, and the kind of the recognition that needs.
Thanks so much, Jen. Yeah, I think I hope that these have been useful conversations for you, and that kind of summing up is also helpful, and that you maybe have some thoughts about where you want to go next. I think the reflections about time and money and how much time it takes, and you need the resources, will perhaps really feed into conversations that people may be able to have with Arts Council further down the line in this series about projects that you might be able to start. Because I think we've seen, projects are, somebody asked that question about how do you persuade people, that colleagues that aren't bought in. And one of the ways is through project work, actually, because then they can see it and understand how good this is, and then they can get on board with embedding it in the organisation. But it can still leave you with a bit of a cliff edge as to what next. So I think projects can be part of the way. Fantastic. Thank you so much. We have a few little bits to do, don't we, Annabelle, before we draw the session to a close?
Yeah. Jen, do you want to talk about the poll?
Yeah, sure. So Annabelle is just going to launch a quick Zoom poll. One part of it is just looking at your reflections on if the session has made any difference to you in terms of your confidence in understanding youth voice and youth-led practice, and just to learn a little bit more about the different kinds of organisations that you're all from.
Can everyone see the poll?
There are just 5 questions on it, and if you wouldn't mind doing it now, that would be awesome. Thank you. So just while the last few people are sending in their responses, and thank you for doing this, we'll just remind you that this is the first of 4 sessions. So this was an introductory session to think about why, to think about some common barriers, some common pitfalls, and then in the next session we dive into the first of 3 focused areas. So the next one on the 12th of November is going to be looking at particularly consultation with young people. So hearing from and listening to young people, and we'll take a really close look at that and developing practice around that. Then the next one after that, which is on, I will say 21st of January, save the date now if you can, is about sharing power, which is about co-creation and really allowing young people to share power and co-create with you, with your organisation. And the last one is about, on the 4th of March, is about influencing and changing society. So particularly enabling young people, empowering them to make a difference in their worlds and their wider communities. So we'll move from this kind of introductory discussion into some quite deep dives into those different areas of practice. And if you're wanting to learn more about all of those different areas, then there are lots of resources that are being shared as part of this free programme on the Thinkific platform. So Annabelle, I think you are going to, oh, there we go.
I've just put the link for Thinkific into the chat. So that's where there are more resources, and there's also the opportunity to start some discussion threads. On there you'll find some videos of how to use Thinkific, should you not know, but you can sign up for free onto that particular course, and then you can, and what we will do is we can add all of the different resources, rivers, anything that people might find useful. We can just continue to build that Thinkific platform as we move forward across the 4 sessions. So yeah, sign up and then you can access all of those and download them as you see fit. And then I am now just putting in the link for the second session, which is, as Louise said, on November the 12th. So that means you just click the link and you can sign up for the next session should you wish to. And we really hope that you will, because it's been fascinating listening to the discussion.
Thank you all. We hope this is the beginning of a growing community of practice around this. Everybody's in different places, but there's been some wonderful experiences and practice shared today, and hopefully some helpful things for people, and we'll just keep building on that. So I think if there's are there any final questions or points that people want to make? Stick up an electronic hand or wave a real one. Okay, well, I'll just say thank you very much to Arts Council for supporting this, to all of our speakers for coming and taking part and being so honest and managing to share a lot in a succinct amount of time that would allow people still to do some work themselves, to all of you for your openness to this process, and to our colleagues from Norfolk and Norwich Festival, and also our lovely signers, Lara and Harry. So thank you very much. Hope to see lots of you, and maybe some more people. Tell others if you know others that would want to come, or someone else from your organisation to keep that conversation going. See you on the 12th of November. Thanks very much. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Louise. Bye-bye.